Welcome to the Geekery podcast, where we're both here.
I'm back.
You're back. Yeah, I'm Void, and I'm here with him. He's Beej. I did that intro wrong. This is how long we've been away. I did the intro wrong. That's bad of me. Today we're talking about like everything and nothing in particular. We have a lot to catch up on. I feel like it's been a few weeks since we recorded.
Yeah, it really has. We were double recorded like 3 weeks ago, I think, and then last week I had family emergency stuff that came up. So I'm so excited to be able to get back and talk about video games for a while.
Yes, me too. I'm going to get a couple things out of the way and then throw it over to you because I really want to hear about your runs. But we both have like a couple bigger chunks of geekery, and I have some little stuff that I can just fly through. So I finished my MCU rewatch, and I ended up talking about the rest of it on a different podcast. So I don't know if you guys know, but Rob's podcast is coming to an end. He announced that episode 100 is going to be the end of the comic box. He needs a break, and he deserves one at this point. But we've been floating this idea for a really long time of doing like a weekly geekery podcast that's not actually every week. So maybe we should call it something different, but just like random people from the network show up, Rob would host, and it would be extremely lightly edited, if edited at all. Just a little bit of like fixing volume levels and like, you know, making the audio a little bit better in post and then putting it out there. So it's more of like a panel discussion with less structure to it. And Rob asked if we would do the pilot to help send him off. So issue, he always calls his episodes issue. I think issue 97 of the comic box, which just came out this week, is the pilot episode for that podcast. So I'm on it, Rob's on it, Katie from Tea Time's on it, and Joe from the Geektude podcast is on it. So that was really fun. Did you even know that we were doing that?
I had no idea until it was done. That was something I've been so disconnected from pretty much everything that whenever I came back, I'd texted you or something. You're like, oh, and by the way, I recorded this new podcast with everybody last night. I was like, what? Say, huh?
Yeah, and so the idea is that it can kind of be whoever's available from the network, and maybe every couple weeks, probably not every week, so it can be more casual. But then we can kind of mix and match hosts and co-hosts and kind of our extended network too, you know, people that we have on as guests sometimes, maybe we can just pull them into it. Like there's a lot of people to draw on, so we'll see how that goes. But the pilot is out there. You can listen to, we basically talk a bunch about the MCU, and then we jumped over and we got into Infinity War spoilers, which I kind of said my piece about that last week, but it was nice to talk about it in a group setting. So yeah, that's out there. Go grab it if you haven't already. And then I played a lot of games since we talked last, but a couple that I can fly through. I played Blossom Tales, which is like, it's like a Zelda-like. You and I were just talking about this. It's very much like a 2D top-down Zelda game. And if you're in the mood for that, it's good. I don't know if I was in the right mood when I sat down to play it, so I don't know if I'm going to keep playing it. I think I played like half of it in one sitting, though, so maybe I will.
I think you said you got, 2 dungeons in or through 2 dungeons?
Well, yeah, so one of the things with it is that the dungeons are really long. Like in a Zelda game, you know how you might have like 3 dungeons and then there's like a big story beat and then there's like 7 dungeons and then the end game. That's pretty typical for Zelda. This straight up has 4 dungeons, and the first one isn't really much of a dungeon. Not really. Maybe there's 5. There's not a whole lot in the game, but one of them is like kind of the intro level. Like here's how you play the game.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, and then there's like 3 or 4 real ones. So I played through 2 of the long ones plus the intro. So it was good, but I'm not in the right mood for it. But if you do really like, you know, the 2D Zelda games, go give that one a shot. It's only like, I don't know, it's like 10, maybe $14.
I think it's 15. Yeah, 15. I think it's $14.99 on Steam. Or not Steam, but on Switch. Maybe it's on Steam too.
Yeah, it's on Switch.
I've been looking at this one, and I'm kind of in the same boat that you are. I kind of lump Zelda-like action RPGs like that in with JRPGs just in my mind, and it's not the kind of game I've been wanting to play, though. That I keep seeing it, and I always look at it, I'm like, man, this game looks awesome. Don't want to play Zelda right now. And I always go on, but one day I'm going to be in that mood, and I know that Blossom Tales, based on what Jay and other people have said about it, is going to make me really happy.
Yep.
One day, so not right now. But.
Yeah, no, exactly. I'm going to leave it on my Switch because like I'll be in the right mood at some point. I just wasn't when I sat down with it, and I still beat half the game because it was good. So I don't know what that says about it. I tried this game on my phone and you know, I'm always trying stuff on my phone and just deleting it pretty quick. But there's a game I played for a few days in a row called Nexomon, and it is a blatant Pokemon ripoff. And it made me realize that if they would just make a real Pokemon game on mobile, they would kill it. Like, there are ways to do it and add some, like, I don't want it to be a gacha game, but they could add a little bit of monetization to it as optional stuff, and then make all of the normal Pokemon things, like a full story and battling and trading and like all the things you expect from the handheld Pokemon games. It would be amazing. And this game, I deleted it because it's not Pokemon, but it's so close to Pokemon that if you want to know what that game would feel like on your phone, try Nexomon just for a day or two. And it'll be like, oh, why hasn't the Pokemon Company done this yet? It's just, I don't know. It was kind of sad for me to see how nicely it moved over to the platform.
Wow. I'm actually going to look it up as we go because I haven't heard of this one. And that's not the kind of game I want to play that on my phone. Like, I want to play new Pokemon games. I love them, but it's not the kind of thing that I'm in the mood for on my phone. But just looking at it here, it looks exactly like Pokemon.
Yeah,
it is. There is no way that they're not even pulling any punches. It's just like, yep, that is exactly what they're making.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's a Pokemon ripoff, no question about it.
Nope.
And then the other one that was really quick I could talk about here is Yakuza 6, because I thought I was going to like it. I really liked it after the demo, and I know I talked about being excited for it. But once I got into it, like, it still had that crazy soap opera type story that I liked, but I thought it was going to open up into a more of an open world, and it never really did. But then reading other people's reviews and listening to other people talk about it, I wonder if I was kind of playing the game wrong. Like, I feel like I was going down the crit path, but unintentionally. Like, usually when I do that, I'm doing it on purpose. I just never knew when I should break away from that to actually go explore the world and do the open world activities, because it's a game where like everything feels so time critical and like, oh, I have to do the next thing. Like, it's important to the story. There was never any time for it to breathe and just explore. Do you know what I mean?
I do. I know exactly what you mean. I was playing, it happened to me in a game earlier this week in Xenoblade Chronicles 2, where I felt so intense. There was something I needed to do that was way across the world, but there was this really intense battle scene going on, and I felt this adrenaline that I needed to push into the next beat, and I was like, I'm not actually on a timer, despite them saying that I am. It's like, I need to go upgrade and do all of this stuff first before I move any further. But it was that feeling of, oh my goodness, there's this urgency there that I hit, where I didn't want to go away, even though I knew that I could, but I felt like I shouldn't.
That's how I felt the entire time. And I played probably like 15 hours of this game. Like, I played a bunch of it. I didn't give up on it early. And that's after playing, I don't know, maybe 4 hours of the demo. So I probably put like 20 hours into Yakuza 6. I think I got decently far. I looked it up and I was maybe halfway through the story, but yeah, I wanted it to hook me more than I did. So I'm kind of disappointed that I didn't latch onto it the way I was hoping I did. But I mean, I guess I have more Yakuza experience now, which is a plus because it's kind of like a cult hit these days. And now I have a better context for what people are talking about. So I'll take that away from it and be happy with my time.
And as much as you like the soap opera part of it, and you got about halfway through it, are you planning on going back and finishing out at least the critical path to get through the story and hit the credits, even if you don't go do any of the open world stuff, since you liked it so much?
I don't know. I couldn't find the right balance of like playing around and like doing the story, and the story is so cutscene heavy, and I think that was part of it too. I thought that the demo I had played was like, there was a lot of setup, so there was a lot of cutscenes, and then it would open up into the world, and then cutscenes would become more sporadic or at least shorter, and they didn't. Like, there are 10, 15, 20-minute cutscenes that happen regularly where you don't do anything except watch.
Yeah.
So something about the balance of the game didn't really click with me in the way that I was hoping either.
And I understand that. I've been playing Xeno games, so I completely understand the 15-minute cutscenes, at least every little bit, that where it just kind of breaks everything up. So I can't say anything at all on you on that one.
Yeah.
So, yep, I know.
So anyway, those are like the quick ones I can get out of the way. I want to hear about your runs, though, and then we can get back to, like, you and I both have a bunch of other games to talk about.
Yeah, so these runs were awesome. That a couple of weeks ago, I went, for those of you who weren't listening or paid attention or cared, I went a few weeks ago to Walt Disney World in Florida and did their Run Disney Star Wars Half Marathon weekend. So over the weekend, I ran the 5K on Friday, the 10K on Saturday, and then the half marathon on Sunday. And I'd also done the virtual half marathon before that to get another couple of medals. So by the end of it all, I finished all of this, and it was super fantastic and fun. I ended up with 6 medals and 4 t-shirts, 4 race shirts, and I was so excited. I now have these really cool Star Wars running shirts that are made out of tech material. Like, I'm really excited about them. And they're Champion brand, and that's what I've been wearing lately. From it's Target brand stuff. That's the one that Target carries. So it's like, these are exactly what I've been wearing. It was just perfect for me. And the medals are really cool. I can't wait to get them hung up. But the runs themselves, there were so many people there, Void. I don't know if you've ever seen like photos of these races or anything at all of the lines and masses of people, but they said for the 10K alone, there were 17,000 people running it.
Wow.
And I'm not sure about the 5K or the half, because I think that the 10K may have been the lower race because it's not as accessible as the 5K is, and people don't necessarily do it if they're coming just for the half marathon. So that may have been the low number. I think I saw that there were 43,000 people there total for the races. It's an absurd number of people. The parks were absolutely crazy, and it was my first experience doing any kind of race of anywhere near this size. That the stuff I had done before was local races where you may have a couple of thousand people running, or a couple of, some of them a couple of dozen, where this is just massive on a scale I'd never seen before. And so the logistics of getting there was crazy. So we stayed on site. We stayed on Disney because they offer transportation to and from the resorts to the start line and from the finish line. So I took the buses, but I had to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning, which is Eastern time. So my body hadn't adjusted to it yet. So that's 1 o'clock our time here in Central. So I had to wake up at 2 a.m. I had to get on the bus at around 3 or 3:15 a.m. So I was there, and I had a Starbucks Frappuccino in a bottle for my caffeine that I just bought, and a Lenny and Larry protein cookie for breakfast beforehand. Sat on the bus, and by 3:15, then they bus you over, and you get to the race. You get to the lot wherever you are, and they have the pre-race stuff going sometime around 3:45 to 4 o'clock in the morning, and they have a DJ going on, and there are all sorts of character stops there, where there was at this one, it was the dark side. So there was Boba Fett, Kylo Ren, Jabba the Hutt, and Darth Vader, Captain Phasma, and then they had BB-8 because you can't resist having BB-8 there. And as they put it, and for some reason BB-8. And so that's actually what the announcer said. It was really funny whenever he said that.
I liked your Boba Fett story. I can't remember if you posted that for everyone or if I just got a text.
Okay. So that's one of the things I was about to go into, because you have to wait in line for this stuff. Like, there's usually a 20 to 45 minute wait for any of these character stuff. But it's 4 o'clock in the morning, and the races don't start until 5:30. So you have plenty of time to get a few of these in. So I'm waiting in line, and this is before the 10K, because Jennifer was with me during the 5K, and we were talking and hanging out and getting pictures with Captain Phasma at the 5K and BB-8. But before Boba Fett, I'm there alone, and so I just get in line. I see Boba Fett has a line, and I didn't even notice him the day before. So I'm like, yeah, I'm going to get my picture taken with Boba Fett. So I go over, and I stand in line for a while. It takes about 30 minutes, which is fine. It's early, and I'm just kind of chilling. And I decide, Chewbacca the day before was on the course for the 5K. And we stopped and waited. And when I came up to Chewbacca, he just gave me a hug. Like one of those bro hugs where the dude comes around, like you clasp hands, you kind of bump chests and pat each other's back. That's what Chewbacca did to me. And so I'm just like, I'm just tickled pink. And so I go, and I'm like, I'm going to hug Boba Fett. And I'm like, I get up here. It's like, this is Disney. I'm going to hug all of this. So they take your camera phone, they take your phone, and they will take pictures with your own camera. So you don't even have to buy the pictures that they do if you don't want to. So I handed him my phone, and I just ran up with my arms out trying to hug Boba Fett, and he just stepped back and pointed at me and went, no. And it was so fun. It was so wonderful, because there is a picture of me, and I don't know if I sent you this one, a picture of me just standing there tickled out of my mind with Boba Fett pointing at me, stepping back away from me.
I think I saw that one, yeah.
It just makes me so happy, because they even have the voice changer, because when he talks, it is his voice. It's the Boba Fett voice. It goes, no. And it just made me so happy, but you can't hug Boba Fett, and that made me kind of sad.
Aw.
there are characters all over the courses, and the 5K was fun because there are kids doing it with their parents, like small kids around 6 years old or younger sometimes, and they're out there and they're walking it. Of course, I mean they're just doing it with their folks, and you know how little kids can run forever anyway without thinking about it, and they were out here doing this, and they wanted their pictures with all these characters, but they didn't like the 2 a.m. wake up time anywhere near, you know, they didn't like it any more than I did. And they were cranky and hilarious. And my wife and I were just laughing at some of these kids in line and some of the parents too, because some of these parents are the most patient, wonderful people I've ever seen. It's like they were so go with the flow. And it's like one little boy wanted to go to Hollywood Studios and see more Star Wars stuff, but that was the day they were planning on going to Magic Kingdom, and he was just like, he didn't even throw a fit. He was like, but I wanted to go back to Hollywood Studios. Aww. And she was like, and his mom was just like, well, if that's what you want to do, would you guys rather go there than the Magic Kingdom on Sunday? And they're like, yeah. And she's like, okay, that's what we'll do then. And it's just like, this is at like 6:30 in the morning after you've been up for like 4 hours, and this kid is having a rational conversation, as rational as, you know, a 6-year-old can have,
right,
about changing their plans, and the mom's just going with it. And I'm like, I couldn't do that. Like, I'm not capable of being that go with the flow when I'm that sleep deprived. And it's so much fun doing this, because even on the half marathon track, like, they have stuff every little bit. They have something for you to do to keep your attention. And whether it might be the Emperor's Chair or another character stop, or they have screens playing the movies as you run past. And as I got to the one playing Return of the Jedi, I got to it just as I could get into earshot and see Admiral Akbar go, "It's a trap!" And it just made me happy that it was just perfectly lined up with me running past that part. It was great. And so when it was dark, there were woods on both sides. That, like, there was just we were on a back road behind Disney World, and it was just trees on both sides, just forest, like is everywhere in the South. It could have been in my back. It could have been like 2 streets over from me here in Alabama. And we were just running along, and I saw these flashes of light up ahead, and I started hearing X-Wing and TIE Fighter guns going off, and I would hear the zooms and everything. And then as I got closer, I saw that they were having lights and kind of like it was like shadows and lights moving along. Like, you could see how they were moving strobes to make it look like X-Wings and TIE Fighters were shooting back and forth across the way and having this battle across the road while you were running across. And it was super cool. And I'm running, and all of a sudden, to my right, an explosion happened, like actual explosion with fire and heat. And I just hear this boom and look over, and there's just a plume of fire going up as I crossed this area. And it was really, really cool. And you heard a fighter crash at the same time. And it was just, this is the kind of thing I didn't expect. I didn't expect just something like that. I expected people standing out with R2 and, you know, Sabine and people like that to get pictures with. I didn't expect to have a TIE Fighter blow up beside me.
Dude, that's sweet. That's awesome.
It was so awesome. And I'm sitting here and I'm just giddy from all of this. And it's the first time I've ever run any races or really any runs without any music or sound at all. Like, I brought my headphones on the 10K and never turned them on. I kept them in my pocket during the half. That I ran 5K, 10K, and a half marathon with no external sound. And I just did it by paying attention to everything that was around me and really honing in on what was the experience that I was having. And I've never been able to do that with a run before. And I don't think I would be able to do it unless it was a run that was so packed like this. There were always people and something to look at. So I can see how people do that on marathons, but I couldn't do it for most shorter runs if it wasn't for Star Wars or having this many people around. It was just super cool. And then we went to all the parks during the days. So I did the 3 races at 2 a.m. Every day, or got up at 2 a.m., then went to the theme parks after that with Jennifer and Adam. So I would get back home at like 9 to 10-ish. So I got got like 3 hours, like maybe 3 or 4 hours of sleep a night, depending on how quickly I could go to sleep. And it was weird going on what may have been about a normal night's sleep for 3 or 4 days across that entire time. But it was so fun, and I was exhausted. But it was like we did all 4 parks. Sometimes we even went back and forth between parks, but it never felt like I was going to injure myself. It was the first time I've been at a theme park at Disney specifically since I lost 150 pounds. That the last time I was there was in 2010, and all I remember is this misery of just like chafing and blistering on my feet and chafing between my legs, just everything from where I was so fat. And this time it wasn't that. It was like I had chafing and blistering, but it was like I paid for it this time. It was like I knew I was getting into it, and it was the good kind of chafing and blistering. And it was just so cool being able to really experience a park, honestly, like a normal human being, because even when I went before, like I never got to do everything I wanted to do because I was always like having to sit down every few minutes to get off of my feet. And being able to run through them, see the stuff in the back, realize how bad their reclamation plant smells, and see all of the greenhouses where they keep all of the plants that they have to replace all the time. They're huge. You just get to see stuff like that in the back, and it's just super fun. That it was well worth the money. It cost a lot to do. It cost more than I anticipated because the race registration is separate from the park tickets, which apparently you don't have to do, but we were there so we did anyway. But it's worth the money to have that experience. I don't understand how people can afford to do it all the time, because there are some people who are like super intense about it, and they have Run Disney tattoos that we saw all over during the expo, and we went around, like people were crazy intense about it. But I don't understand because it's so expensive, but it was super fun. So I'm going to end up doing it again at some point, but probably not for a while. But it was worth every bit of it. It really was amazingly cool to see all of the stuff. And they had the Star Wars characters all throughout the parks and everything, of course, especially Hollywood Studios. And they already have the Last Jedi stuff in Star Tours, that they've updated the Star Tours ride. It's one of those motion rides, and it has stuff from the Last Jedi in it where you fly over Crate.
Sweet.
And it is really awesome.
I'm glad that the whole trip worked out, because I know that you were looking forward to it, and you didn't know exactly what it would be, but it sounds like it was a really good time.
It was an absolutely wonderful time. And my friend Adam doesn't like people driving his car. And he drove down there, and we were taking his car because mine messes up. So on top of having a really good time, I got to ride from North Alabama to Orlando, which is about a 10.5 to 12 hour drive, depending on how much you stop. He drove the entire way both ways. So I just got to sit in the back and play video games the entire way down there. Like I had mentioned that I was going to get to do most of it. Like that's all I did the entire way down there and back. I sat in the back seat, played on my Vita and Switch, and it was fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, you've been doing a ton of JRPGs, which we should get into here in a second.
So
but like,
much.
I mean, you did so much that you actually inspired me to start up Gamefly again, which probably, I mean, we could take a quick break. The Geeky offer of the week, you can go to gamefly.com/geek and get a free 1-month trial, I think is what we have set up.
Gameflyoffer.com/geek.
Yeah, gameflyoffer.com/geek. And I reactivated my membership because after talking to you for the last few weeks about how many JRPGs you've been playing, there was a bunch that I wanted to try but not buy necessarily, but like it's infectious because you're so excited about it. And then like the 4-job fiesta for Final Fantasy V is coming up because it's in June, and just like hearing you talk so much about JRPGs, I went and I got my save file all prepped for it, which I forgot to do last year. Well, I did last year, but you can basically play up to the first shrine, like the Wind Shrine, and you can like level up and do a little bit of grinding. It's not that long. It's like half an hour worth of content, but still, I did it, and then I made a save file that's like, okay, this is ready to go for the 4-job fiesta, and I'm just like psyched about it just because I was talking to you about JRPG stuff so much. Yeah, but so anyway, yes, I restarted Gamefly to hopefully grab a bunch of JRPGs and then a couple other things to catch up on. And I guess if we're taking a quick break, the network go listen to everything on the network. Geek to 2 this week. I know they have part 2 of their discussion about Infinity War, and they talk about like phase 4 of the MCU, which is fun speculation. Tea Time with Katie and Chelsea, they talked about fan fiction again. They did a fan fiction part 2. And then the comic box, which I'm on, which isn't really the comic box. I already talked about that, the pilot episode. But for the comic box, episode 100, the last episode, Rob is going to just do a total Q&A episode. So if you have any questions for him at all, or you need comic advice, or you want really anything, I think he's basically going to just take every question and give everything an answer because then he gets a giant break afterwards. Yeah, send those his way. But yes, okay, I need to hear about Xenoblade Chronicles 2, especially because I know that's the one that you were like super pumped about.
Okay, so I avoided Xenoblade Chronicles 2 for 2 reasons whenever it first came out. Like, I watched the trailers, and Austin got me kind of excited about it whenever it was first coming out because the trailers looked really cool, but I didn't remember back last year, I think, maybe it was 2 years ago, whenever I got Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and bounced off of it after 7 hours, that I just couldn't invest the amount of time in it that I would have to take, because these are around 60 to 90 hour games generally.
Yeah, well, we were just talking about this because like you didn't like it, and I think I rented it and I didn't like it, but then you played Xenoblade 2 and then you came back and you just bought Xenoblade 1 and a new 2DS to go with it, right?
Yes, I did.
So, sorry, I know I'm kind of jumping around to what you did, but I know you picked those up because you had such a good time with 2, which is interesting that you came back around to it.
Yeah, and part of it is because 2 is so good. 2, from the very beginning, really starts out just wonderfully well. It's pretty, it is well written, the voice acting works well, and it was like Austin had told me, the characters are really interesting, that they do something where it's not even, it's hard to describe, where he said that they're his favorite characters outside of Final Fantasy IX, and I can understand that. I don't think they're that awesome because, I mean, Vivi, but at the same time, Rex and Pyra are really, really good characters. The villains leave something to want, I think, but overall the story itself fell in almost immediately with my kind of take on science fantasy, where it goes in and it delves into theological stuff, which has always been a thing of the Xeno games from Xenogears onward, that they're dealing with what it means to be human and personality, and honestly, where do we come from and why are we here? And that's what I love the most about the Xeno games, and what I loved about Xenogears, and then the like half of Xenosaga that I played, that they're great for that story. So it hit me with that early on. Like, you get into the meat of this story early, and then it just expands from there. It's really epic. And the only problem that I had early on with it was that Xenoblade or Xenogears, I loved these giant robots, the gears. That was one of those things. I don't, as much of a not anime fan as I am, like I grew up watching Gundam. I in high school and younger than that, and then through college, like Gundam Wing and all of the different Gundams. I love big robots because I love big monster movies and things like that, and they kind of go hand in hand in my mind. And I finally, there are big robots in Xenoblade Chronicles 2. They're in the later part of the game, but it made me really happy to finally get into more of the sci-fi part of it. But I beat this game already. That I started it the Tuesday I came back. Austin let me borrow it. I started it on the drive home on April 24th, and I finished it around 3 days ago, and I'd put in 66 hours and 47 minutes to beat it. And Austin and Jay had said they went into the 90s, so I beat it a lot faster than some people did, but I didn't do a whole lot of side quests. There are a ton of side quests, and there's a big collection system in it. How much about the system and game itself do you know about 2?
I know a little bit about like the blade system, which I see was also an issue that you brought up with it. I think I remember hearing a lot about that from reviews, and then it sounded like the rest of it is very similar to 1, which I had bounced off of because like the battle system did not teach you it well, and it just wasn't interesting at the beginning.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah,
it's still not. But the blade system is neat. I like it how, like, you have 3 people in your party, but you each have 3 companions, 3 people in your party, and you also
like
each
weapons,
have 3 companions.
Pokemon, right? Basically, like you collect them and use them or like release them or something.
Yep. You collect them from crystals. You basically open up random boxes and blind boxes to see which weapon and blade you get out of it, and every one of the blades is a particular kind of character or monster or quirky companion with their own personality and side quests, and then you can equip them, and you get each of them have a specific kind of weapon that goes along with them. Some of them throw, it's called a bit ball, which is basically like a soccer ball that they're kicking at the enemy, or chrome katanas, or swords, great axes, stuff like that, and they're each specifically tied to as a tank, a healer, or an attack blade. And so you can really make any character anything you want, if you just attach blades to them of those specific classes, and you can mix and match them. Like 2 tanks and a healer would give you different bonuses than 3 attack blades, because that's how you define your class in the game. So there's a mini job system in there, but the problem is that it's all RNG, so you can go entire playthroughs without getting any of the blades that you want, and that's kind of what happened to me. I got most of the ones that I really wanted, but the optional ones that I really wanted to play with, that I thought would be cool, that I'd looked up, I'd never got. And so I was a little irritated at that, because there was one of them, Cosmos from Xenosaga, is like the rarest of all of them. One of the main characters in Xenosaga is one of the blades, and it's super rare that a lot of people don't get her. So I didn't feel like, I knew I wasn't going to get her, but there was a couple others like Zenobia that I wanted. But there's a New Game Plus mode they added in, which lets you keep all the blades that you had, typical New Game Plus stuff. And then there's new DLC coming out by the end of the year. So I'll grab that, do a New Game Plus, invest another 70 hours in it, and hopefully fill out some of the rest of my blades. And then there's also a lot of end game stuff with super bosses that are basically tiered up, that you can go continue to level up and fight all the way up to, I want to say, level 130, when I think your character can only get to 95, maybe. I can't remember.
It's crazy how much the game grabbed you, because like it's been a while since you finished a game, much less like a long game, and you played like almost 70 hours of it, and now you're going back to Xenoblade Chronicles 1. So I'm glad that you found something to like latch onto, just because like you've needed it, I think.
Yeah. And Xenoblade 1, it's a really good game. I have no idea what was wrong with me initially. Well, I have kind of an idea what was wrong with me initially, is that when I went in and knew that it was a real-time battle system, I was expecting something like Kingdom Hearts or Zelda or something along those lines, and it's not. It's an almost turn-based kind of... You know the battle system.
I do, yeah. No, it's like, it's
kind of
turn-based, but it's also real-time, like, and you queue, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, they're auto attacks, and you have to queue up attacks. You can queue 2 at a time really quickly, and
it's
you cycle between
like
them.
Hotbar combat from an MMO. Not quite, but
almost.
Like kind of, a little bit in that vein.
Kind of. And they make it much better in 2, and that's the reason I was able to go back to 1.
See, this is why I want to go and try 2. This is why I got GameFly. Like, I want to try 2, because like I bounced off of 1 so hard that I don't know, but you're just like gushing over it, so I gotta get back to it.
So there's so many tutorials in Xenoblade 2 that they up until the final boss. I swear to you, at the final boss, they introduce a new battle mechanic. For you to use if you want to, and on the last boss there's a new tutorial, and tooltip tutorial thing, and they constantly keep slowly adding things to the battle system for you, and it honestly took me, I think, around 17 to 20 hours to really get the battle system in 2, and because I got it, and it was easy enough to get, because it works better than the first one, because it's almost like, instead of the hotbar, you have the trigger where you hold R2, and then that opens up the different attacks you have, and it's a lot of timing between auto attacks, where it's a lot different, but it uses that same base of you do this between your auto attacks, but it works much cleaner and they explain it much better. And now there are ways to kind of, it's like Chrono Cross in making sure that your elements line up, that if you do certain elements in certain orders, then you get super powerful combos that give you extra experience and loot and things like that. So like they explain all of this really, really well in 2, and I learned how to do it. And then so I went back to 1 and realized that they had taught me how to play Xenoblade 1 by giving me a better improved system in 2. So it didn't take me nearly as long to catch up in 1. And I started, when I got to combat, I was like, oh, I see what they did better here, but now I understand why I hated this. And so I'm able to get in. I'm about 17 hours into Xenoblade 1 right now, and it finally stopped being so dreary about 4 hours ago, where it was also a very drab game at first, where Xenoblade 2 starts out mega colorful, and Xenoblade 1 finally got into the stuff that I care about. I got into the really sci-fi stuff that feels like a Xeno game, and I'm about 15 to 17-ish hours in when it did that. So wow. And also there is a tie between them. At the end of Xenoblade Chronicles 2, you find out how it connects to Xenoblade 1, and I'd figured this out like when it did it, and then I went and read about it. I was like, oh yeah, that is obviously what he was talking about. So it was, but there's a small tie that shows that these games are going on concurrently in alternate worlds.
Well, and now you also have like a whole queue of JRPGs. I'm looking at it right here. I don't know if you want to dive into anything just for time. We can always save some of it for next week, but like, you're obviously in JRPG mode and enjoying it, which I love. I like that you are enjoying games and you've kind of like found what you're in the mood for right now.
Yeah, and like you said, I usually don't go in for this many hours, but part of it is that I have so much stuff going on in my personal life that I am honestly diving into RPGs just as a way to deal with stuff that's happening. So being able to immerse myself in these really intense narratives that or take interaction let me not be idle like when I'm watching TV. So yes. I'm
totally
really loving
too.
that part of this.
Yeah. Well, and it's not only JRPGs. You've been playing, well, wait, was it you or was it only Jennifer that's been playing Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze?
I've been watching her play Tropical Freeze. Okay. I haven't played this one yet. Well, I've played it and beat one of the bosses that she hated. It wasn't that she couldn't beat it. It was she hated that boss and was just like, here, get me through this. I don't want to play it. I was like, okay. And I hate it too. It's the bird boss in World 2. It's just not fun to play. I hate that boss. But yeah, we were talking about, she was like, you can talk to me about Xenoblade all you want. She told me this today, and she was like, we can talk about Donkey Kong, but I don't know what I would say. It's fun and it's pretty, and I don't like the ground that bounces with you. And but that's pretty much like, she loves it. She likes being able to go through as Funky to be able to collect all the stuff.
Dude, Funky mode is fun. I've been playing with my kids, which is why
it is.
Yeah. Yeah,
and Donkey mode is fun. I love the original one on Wii U, and so did she. But Funky mode, just being able to not have to collect all the Kong words and puzzle pieces in one go, makes such a difference in terms of enjoyment. It's kind of like you and I were talking about a long time ago, putting it on easy mode when it stops being fun. That's kind of the way that Funky mode is for us. It's just like, I don't care about getting all of these in one. I just want to be able to get it and see this stuff. And so she's been having a blast going and collecting all the Kong letters and all the puzzle pieces and stuff.
Yeah, I think I realized in just playing with my kids, and well, I started up a Donkey Kong save file, and then I started up a Funky mode save file with my kids. And in playing both of them, I think I realized that I don't like the pacing of the levels in Donkey Kong. They're like slightly too long, but they also have way too many diversions of like, here's a letter, here's a puzzle piece, here's like a banana puzzle to solve. My favorite levels have been the ones where you can't stop. So like minecart levels for the most part. There's a log flume level that's the same way too. But
It's so fun. Was it sawmill slide, something?
Yeah, but like those have been my favorite because it's a really good platformer that like has a good flow to it if you keep going forward. But the game incentivizes you to constantly stop and think and go back and like, oh, is this a puzzle or should I collect these things? Yep. And I actually think that kind of takes away from it because I have way more fun when I just push through. And I'm trying to get myself in the right headspace for it because I was finding that like a level would take me a long time. And then when I finish like a Mario level, I can't wait to start the next one. When I was finishing a Donkey Kong level, I was like, oh, do I really want to like invest in starting the next level or I'll just put it down for the night. And I did that a bunch of nights in a row. So once I got to play with my kids and we were playing with Funky Kong and then whoever else, because you can pick, it was fun to just like not worry about it and just push through the levels. So I don't know. I guess I'm kind of having like a mixed time with it, but it's also just like a really solidly designed platformer. So if you're after that, it's a really good Donkey Kong platformer. It's probably one of the best Donkey Kong games that I've played.
When I popped it into the Wii U, however long ago it was, I playing through the first couple of levels, it felt the most like Donkey Kong Country on the Super Nintendo when I was a kid as any Donkey Kong game has since. That from Donkey Kong Country 2 on, this one kind of felt more like, had that feeling that you got from Donkey Kong Country. And it's just like you said, it's a good platformer. The levels are long and the bosses are way too long. They each have so many different phases that it's just absurd, but it's fun.
Yeah, and I think that I might just stop my single player playthrough and only play with my kids because when they're playing, it's more about like, can we even beat the level together? And when I'm playing, I'm like, oh, I got to get that thing and I got to get the other thing. It's probably just a mental hang up and I can't quite turn it off. So maybe I just put that run aside and I only play when they want to play. I think I'll have a better time with it if I do that.
And Jennifer's favorite levels are the same ones as yours, the minecart levels where it's constantly moving. Those are the ones that she loves the most. She thinks they're fun and they're beautiful. That this game is even prettier on the Switch than it was on the Wii U. That I know I'd read that they've got 60 frames per second on when it's docked, and the colors are just incredibly vibrant. This game is pretty.
Yeah, well, and like Donkey Kong's not the only game that you or your wife and I have both been playing, but we both tried Hogwarts Mystery, right? Because you said you haven't played, but you saw her playing.
I didn't. Yeah, I watched her play a little bit, and she had downloaded it, and I never did, and I don't think I'm gonna.
Don't. No, it's so it starts decent enough. It's just like it's not a visual novel, but it's a story, right? Like they're trying to tell a story. Right. There's not a lot of gameplay to it, which is fine. There's a couple like gestures and like mini games for spells and stuff, but I was giving like the gameplay and the story a chance to kick in, and then very quickly you hit this part with Devil Snare, which I don't know if you were on the internet much for a day or two after this came out, but I saw it all over Twitter. It basically, like the Devil Snare grabs you, and then you have to use literally all of your energy to like progress past it, but even using all of your energy isn't enough. So this is the main part that's wrong with the game. In other games, even if there's an energy mechanic, if you need like, let's say 100 energy just to make the math good, right? And your maximum energy in the game is like 50. You could put 50 in, you could walk away for a day or 2 days or a month and come back when your energy is recharged, put the other 50 energy in and then move past that thing, right?
Yeah.
In this game, you have that, but you're time restricted. So it'll be, you have to spend 100 energy on this thing. You only have 3 hours to do it. So you have to go in, put 50 energy into it, walk away, and make sure you come back before that 3 hours is up. But you have to wait long enough that your energy has recharged so that you can get past the obstacle. Wow. That is why this game is broken. Like
that's dumb.
When I eventually hit one, I didn't even pass the first year. I think there's like 6 or 7 like Hogwarts years worth of content. Somewhere in the first year, one of those things that I had to get past, it was way beyond the Devil Snare. I actually played like a decent chunk of year one, and there was something where I dumped all my energy into it, and then I had to remember to come back within 3 hours, and I forgot like 4 times in a row, and that's when I uninstalled the game. I was like, this is so dumb. It's just, I don't know. But I mean...
And you only get like the 2 tries? Like you can only do that once?
It's bad, but and it's like,
oh god,
the story they're trying to tell and the gameplay that's in it does not match the monetization structure that they have. Like, there's a way to structure this game in a friendly way that makes it approachable for the story, and they haven't done that. So I mentioned this to say you should probably steer clear of it, even if you're like a super Harry Potter fan.
Has Rob played this one? Because he's a super Harry Potter fan, and I haven't seen or anything that he's said about it, because I've been, like I said, disconnected for a while. So how does he feel about it?
He's still picking away at it, but I think he's feeling some of the same pain points. Not as much. I mean, he's pushing through it because he's more of a fan than I am, but I heard some of the same complaints from him. But I mean, the main thing that I was playing since we last talked was God of War, which I texted you about a bunch.
And I'm glad, like, I've been excited to hear because you've been looking forward to God of War for a long time. And until you told me just recently, it may have even been in the next to last episode that we recorded, that it was not a remaster, but a new game, that I'm so excited to hear about this.
Yeah, it's God of War. Like, they started over the title with, just God of War with no number, but it's a continuation from the first 3 games. And my history with God of War, really quick, is like, the first game was amazing and was like mind-blowing. The second game was like the game of a generation, maybe, at the time. I mean, I was a teenage boy and it was like angry rage, kill all the things, and like really good graphics too. Like PS2, like that game was pushing the PS2's graphics capabilities.
Yep.
Those things together, like I loved that game at the time. But then by the time God of War 3 came out, I was over my teenage angsty phase, and it just didn't do anything for me. I did not, like, I tried that game, and I stopped within the first hour, I think, because Kratos was so one note. He was just about anger and rage and vengeance, basically. This is the same Kratos, but aged way up. And he's a god. Like, he becomes a god in the very first game or something when he kills Ares, the god of war, hence the name. I don't know if you've ever played these. Have you?
I was a little past the angry, angsty teenage phase. I was within my first year or two of college when this came out, so I just missed that perfect time for this one, but to really grab me. So I played the first one a little bit. I watched more of it, and that's about my history with it. I know of it and I've seen it, but never got into it. Kind of like Devil May Cry. It's something that was fun to watch for a little while, but I kind of like, okay, this is what happens, and moved on.
Okay, so it's the same Kratos, but he's not like old, but he's older. Whereas in the other ones, he looked like he was probably in his, late 20s, like super fit, prime of life type thing. Now he looks like he's somewhere in his like late 40s, and he's a god. So hundreds and hundreds of years could have passed. They purposefully don't tell you how much time it's been, but he has walked away from home. He's walked away from Greece, and the fact that he killed the entire Greek pantheon, I don't know if you knew that happened. It's not really a spoiler at this point for really old games.
Yeah, you had told me about that.
So he walked away from that just because, like, he grew up and he, like, didn't want to, or, he kept maturing and he was just, like, had to get away from it. So it picks up with him way older, and he has a son, and he had a partner. I don't think they say that they were ever married, but the woman that he had his son with is dead, and that's kind of where the game starts with. She just recently died, and it's about like building her a funeral pyre is like the very first 5 minutes of the game, and then the whole game is about like you and your son taking her ashes to the highest mountain in like all the realms. Like that's the basic premise of the game that gets set up right away, and it's a really interesting look at a character maturing, and he's not always good. Like, he's not perfect at it. He's not really a good dad in a lot of ways, whereas he gets better over the course of the story when he spends time with his kid. And some of it too is interesting where like the son gets kind of ragey at times, and he's like tries to pull him back. He's like, no, like I've learned from this, like, you don't need to go down that path. That's the story perspective, and it worked for me. Like the whole dadification of games that we're seeing recently, like people who have been in the games industry for 10, 20 years now, who have kids, and now they're trying to make stories about parents, right? Mostly dads, because it's a mostly male-dominated industry, which I would love to see more diversity there with like adopted kids and like momification of games and whatever. But for right now, we have datification of games, and I think that's fine.
Right.
I really like this game. It's not going to be my game of the year, and I know it will be a lot of people's. I'm not that big of a fan of third-person action games, and I guess like maybe I should just hit a couple negatives really quick. The things that stuck out to me, like there are traversal puzzles that get kind of samey the more you get into the game. Like, oh, I've seen a variation of this puzzle 10 times now, 15 times now. Like, I understand I have to shoot the crystal with an arrow and it makes a light bridge. Like, whatever, let's move on.
Right.
And
okay.
There's also like the third person action starts to feel samey too, just because there's a lot of it, right? There's like 40 hours of game here, which most third person action games are like 8 hours. Maybe.
Yeah, I was like 12 at the outside for some of the longer ones I've played, but there's 40 in this?
No, this is like a 40-hour game. I spent 40 hours with it. I mean, I did some of the side stuff too. I bet if you mainlined it on a casual run, it would be like 25 hours-ish.
Still, that's about double what I've ever played in a third-person action game all the way through.
Yeah, well, speedrunners have already attacked it, and the fastest time is like 8 hours, and that's with skipping everything possible and going as fast as you possibly can. So if that tells you anything about the actual length of the game.
My goodness.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean the third person action, there's not enough variety in the enemies you face, and there's not enough variety in the bosses you face. There's this one troll that the first time you encounter it, it's like, oh my gosh, like it's a crazy set piece battle, and then it's amazing how many times they reuse that asset and color it differently, and it just doesn't have the same impact after a while. Outside of those few things, I really, really liked the game. I'm mostly positive on the game. It's definitely going to make the cut for something to talk about at our mid-year review, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's in my top 5 games of the year at the end of the year. It's not going to be at the top. I can tell that. But again, it's because of where I'm coming at it from with a third-person action game. There's super high production values in this game. Like, I haven't seen a game that looks this good on the PS4 ever. Like, it's amazing. And there are no camera cuts in this game, which is something that...
Yeah, you're telling me about that. I forgot about that.
Yeah, so it's something that they were talking up ahead of time, and I didn't know... I thought it would be interesting. I didn't know how well it would work. It works so well. You are always right there with Kratos, and Atreus, his son, too. But, I mean... the camera, sometimes it'll float away from Kratos to like see other NPCs or like go to Atreus or like whatever for a cut scene, for lack of a better term, but there's no cut. So it's not actually a cut scene. It's just a scene that plays out and the camera kind of wanders over to other stuff. But the entire game, the camera never cuts away from you, and it's always kind of close behind over your shoulder. So it has this intimate feel that I don't think I've ever had in a third-person action game of any kind before. There are moments, too, because there's no real fast travel in this game until you beat it. There's hints at it, and you can see where the fast travel system is going to be, and it's like, when am I going to unlock this in the story? And not really spoiler, but you don't get full access to it. You get like a limited access that's more story-based. You don't get full access until the end of the game. So there's never really any cut, which also means there's a lot of travel time. And they fill the travel time with interesting things. Sometimes it's just like a quiet moment and the camera will like zoom in on Kratos or like do a 360 spin around him. And there's just like a pause in a way that is really effective. But a lot of the time when you're traveling, especially when you're in the boat going from point A to point B, they're telling stories. And there's this really cool dichotomy going on between Kratos and Atreus, because Kratos is willfully kind of pulled away from the world after all of his experiences, and Atreus grew up here, right? So Atreus learned all about Norse mythology, which I don't even know if I said up front, but it's set in like Norse mythology is basically the setting of the game.
Yeah.
So Atreus learned all about Norse mythology from his mother, and Kratos never really picked any of it up. So Kratos starts to ask about like the other gods they run into and like the stories and like encounters they have or like set pieces. He's like, what's the deal with that? And Atreus is like, oh, well, it's this thing from these people and this is what mom told me about it. So it's like he can act as the audience surrogate in a very organic way because he never really paid attention.
And that's awesome.
Yeah, and there's other things too, like Kratos never learned to read the ruins of, this Norse land. So every time there's something to read, it's indecipherable to him, but you can hit the button for Atreus and he's like, boy, come read this. And he has to read it to him. It works. It works surprisingly well, and they have this. They have an arc together from beginning to end that I really liked, and it worked really well on me. Again, I'm a father, so like I'm target demo here, but between the story and the setting and the exploration, this game hooked me. And I didn't think I would ever be interested in exploration in a God of War action game. Like,
yeah, it's not something that people generally say.
No, not at all. But I mean, like, that's what I want. That's what I took away from it at the end. Like, I was playing through the action sequences because I had to beat the game. But I beat the game for the world, the lore, the exploration, and the story. And I walked away from the end of the game just extremely happy with how it ended and the experience that I had. You probably could have cut maybe 5 or 10 hours out of the game and made it tighter, but they didn't, and I think it still works okay. I didn't even talk about the combat. I mean, the combat is like, it's cool combat, but that's not what I focus on, just because that's not where I'm coming from. I should say the axe is really fun. You can throw it and call it back like Mjolnir. I never say that word out loud.
Meow meow.
Yeah. Thor's hammer. It's not Thor's hammer, but you can throw the axe and call it back like that, which is really cool. And then anytime you throw the axe, you can just start punching people. So there's a whole different like combo tree for melee attacks without the axe. But I like the axe. I actually think I like the axe better than I ever liked the Blades of Chaos from the original games. So that's cool too. And then arrows. So Atreus shoots arrows, and basically Kratos has arrows by proxy because Atreus is always there. They did an NPC in a way that he's always there with you, but never in an annoying way. So anytime you hit square, he'll shoot arrows. So you basically have complete control over when you're shooting arrows at stuff. But it's solid. I think if you're a third-person action fan, you would really like this game. Again, it's just not. That's not what I geek out over. It's okay. I had fun with it for the first 10 hours, and then I did it for the other 30 hours because I wanted to find out the story. Because that's the kind of person I am.
Yeah. I mean, and that's good, though, that these kind of games are growing with the target demographic of the original, too.
Yeah.
That the first one hit you because it was exactly where you were in your life and your gaming life, and now where you are in both at this point is what those same developers have looked at and evolved the series into as well. So that's fantastic. In my mind, it shows a real... what's the word I'm looking for? A real, not dedication, but just a real awareness of the people who play their game and what kind of game that they're actually making and story they're trying to tell.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I walked away feeling extremely impressed, and like I was ready for another God of War. If they want to continue the series, I am bought back in a way that I didn't think was ever going to be possible with this particular character. So that's kind of amazing in a way.
Are you going to go back and play through any of the remastered original trilogy now?
I really want to go give 3 another shot because I never played it. I don't expect that I'm going to beat any of them because, again, it's just kind of like angsty, ragey, and that's not me. I think it's every teenage boy to some extent for some period of time, and it just happened to catch me at the right time with God of War 1 and 2, but I'm so far beyond that these days that I don't think I could play one of those games.
Is that going to be one of your GameFly games, I guess?
Yeah, I'll probably get the God of War 3 remaster from GameFly and just see. I just want to see what's there. Yeah. But I guess I played a couple other games too. Did you have any other ones you wanted to dive into? I know you said you were trying Marvel Strike Force.
Well, yeah, so this Marvel Strike Force game, it's the only time I've downloaded a game from watching a YouTube ad, that I actually clicked a YouTube ad whenever I was watching a video. And because the ad actually made me like, what is that game? And it is Marvel. Remember when I was talking about Future Fight a long time ago that kept me for so long?
Yeah.
It is exactly that kind of game. It has the upgrades and the equipment and the training and giving new stars, upgrading the different kind of gacha hero collection thing that most of these games have, and with energy and all of that, except instead of being a brawler, it has turn-based like JRPG strategy type battles where you have abilities for each of your characters on a team and you're going back and forth doing these turn-based battles. The animation is pretty, and I'm not going to play it anywhere near as long as I played the other one, but it's interesting that if anybody out there really liked it, the kind of mechanics that it had, that this one is a very similar but also a different kind of combat kind of gacha game. So it's cool and pretty, and Spider-Man does some cool moves. So I haven't spent any money on it, but whenever I get a notification that there's a new orb waiting for me to open, sometimes I go do it. So it's something that Rob ought to try. So when he's listening to this, Rob, go download Marvel Strike Force and try it.
Nice. I guess the only other game that I really want to talk about was I tried the Detroit Become Human demo, which, do you know about that game at all?
I've seen it. I know nothing about it. I haven't even paid attention to it. Like,
okay,
I didn't.
It's from one of the developer. Like, I don't want to cast a wide net, but like the guy who's associated with it, that I always forget his name. He's like from Quantic Dream, but he's kind of a controversial figure with how he approaches stuff. There's not great things about him, but he also sometimes makes very interesting games. So I was kind of hesitant to go into it. The setting is like the future. So I think it's like 50 years in the future, maybe not even that far away. And there are androids and they exist. So a lot of it is like about androids and how they're not human, but should they be treated as human? And it's about how like the androids are oppressed in the future and all of the implications that go with that. So you play as 3 different androids over the course of the game, and I think their stories all interweave. The demo was basically one android that's a hostage negotiator, and you get to walk through one scenario. So it's, at its core, it's like a choose your own adventure game, and you know how that appeals to me, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's why I was trying it out. I was like, is there really a lot of choice here, or does it just feel like it? Because there are both. I'm looking at you, Telltale. And so this game actually has a ton of choice. What happened was I played through the demo and I went, yeah, I feel like, I'll check that out when it's cheap or when I can rent it on Gamefly. Or like, I was like, that's like a $30 game. And I put it away for the night. And then I came back the next day and I was like, well, let's see a different way this could have played out. And I played through it again. And when I played through it a second time, I did a couple different choices and I got a very different ending. And then something I didn't notice after the first playthrough, which was there, I just wasn't paying attention. You can go back and look at your decision tree. And I was like, look at all of the empty places. Look at all these things that I missed or chose something different. So I played through it a third time and I did radically different decisions and I got a very different outcome. And then I was like, okay, I might have to get this game right when it comes out.
Yeah, if you're going back and doing that through the demo, you would probably fall deep into the full game.
Yeah, so I had a whole kind of arc with this over the course of 2 nights to the point where I went from meh, maybe to yeah, I think I have to get this. So that was kind of interesting to run into.
And you saying that, I was actually going back to the stuff that I've been reading about with the JRPGs. Have you ever tried Radiant Historia?
Yes.
I haven't tried it yet, but I've seen it described as a choose your own adventure RPG. So I was wondering if that was something that you had looked into, because it might be something you like.
It's not choose your own adventure. It is 2 competing timelines that you can jump back and forth between. And you can take things from one into the other to influence it, to unlock more of the like decision paths in it. It's interesting though. It's definitely an interesting game. If you pick it up, we need to talk about it but I'm gonna wait. I want you to experience it before I talk too much more.
I've got the demo on my 2DS right now, and when I get the 3DS, I'll probably play through the demo of it at least, because I've got it should be coming in tomorrow.
Cool.
That I like Xenoblade 1 enough that I bought a 2DS to play it on, and then I realized for the same price I could get a 3DS from GameStop with 2 games, and so I'm getting that in tomorrow and then taking back the 2DS so I can have Xenoblade in 3D.
That works. Cool. I guess the last thing for me from this week, I watched all of the Last Jedi special features, and they were really good. I mean, there's a making a scene thing that was cool. There was a bunch of deleted scenes that were interesting. When I turned on the director commentary, there was a documentary about the balance of the Force, and it talks explicitly about like gray Jedis, which how much that interests me. Yeah, but the one that was the coolest was called The Director and the Jedi, and it's basically about Rian Johnson and Mark Hamill, and both of them approaching this movie. It's more on Rian Johnson's side about like everything that goes into the production, which I just found, I don't know, like I was engrossed in that special feature it was probably like an hour and a half. Like I didn't stop to do anything else. I just watched it all the way through because it was so good.
Well, yeah, I figured. I mean, that's the kind of thing you watch all the way through.
Yeah. I think that's all I have for this week, though. Did you have anything else? We can dive into your JRPGs next week. You have a lot.
Yeah, I've got a lot of things to say. I've played so many different things. Really, the only other thing that I wanted to say was we've still been watching Crazy Ex-Girlfriend that I'd mentioned before.
Oh, yeah.
And we've gotten into season 3, which has finally, it's really dealing with true-to-life mental health issues with people with anxiety and personality disorders and how those affect your life and your friendships and your relationships. And for being a comedy on the CW, it handles these in an incredibly realistic way and shows the ramifications that in a very, very realistic way that is calling back kinds of me and Jennifer are both sitting there like, yeah, that kind of stuff, that's how people reacted to us. It's like whenever I was going through my worst part and she was too, it's like, yeah, that's wonderful that they're presenting this in that kind of issue in such a rational way as opposed to putting a stigma on it. But it's really good. It's really well handled. So if that's something that anybody out there cares about, that getting mental health destigmatized, Crazy Ex-Girlfriend works up to it really, really, really well. I cannot wait to finish this show and then see the next season when it comes out next fall, I think, maybe next spring.
Cool. Good. I'm glad you're still liking it.
So, yeah, good stuff.
Okay. Well, I think we both have some things, but we'll hold on to them for next week. Maybe we'll do a little bit more catch up next week, or just dive into JRPGs again, because that list, I want to know all your thoughts about that list, and it looks like you have a bunch.
I haven't played all of them.
Okay.
I have a huge list here, and not all of them are finished by any means, but I have thoughts about them.
Okay, good. Yes, that's what we're going to do next week. We've just decided. That's it for this week, though. You can write to us with comments, suggestions, or feedback. Our email address is geek2geekcast@gmail.com, or reach us on Twitter @geek2geekcast. We also have longer discussion threads on the subreddit at reddit.com/r/geek2geekcast.
And we're on Slack too, so if you are for work or just want to talk to us, go to slack.geek2geekcast.com for an invite. And remember, like we said earlier, we're part of a podcast network, so go to geek2geekcast.com to see all of our shows.
I blog at agreenmushroom.com, and you can find me at grnmushroom. That's green mushroom without the E's on Twitter.
And I'm on Twitter as @Professor Beej. That's Beej with 2 E's. And I'm online at runningshoes.tv.
We've been Void and Beej with your Geek to Geek podcast. That'll do it for this week. See you next week, geeks.
Bye, geeks. I'll be back.
Hi everyone, I'm Katie.
And I'm Chelsea, and we are the hosts of Tea Time with Katie and Chelsea. We are two best friends who love pop culture and talking about pretty much whatever we want. Katie!
Yes?
Stop thinking about Zac Efron and tell our future listeners what some of our latest episodes have been about.
Well, we've talked about Zac Efron.
No, get it together, Katie.
Fine. We've talked about fan fiction, classical literature adaptations, favorite TV couples, and so much more. So grab your cup of tea or whatever your drink of choice is and download our podcast today.
Hi, my name is Joe Hogan, and I'm a geek. And if you're currently listening to this, there's a good chance you're a geek too. So check out my podcast, Geektitude. Each week, I talk with somebody about their geek aptitude. Sometimes I talk to people in a geeky profession. Sometimes it's someone doing something really cool with their geekiness. Often it's another geeky podcaster. But it's always someone who wants to share their inner geek. So join me each week as we come together to geek out about all the geeky stuff we love. And remember, this week, keep it geek.